Hey, y'all. Welcome to Questions You Didn't Ask. Did you know that this very spot could be showcasing your business or event? Whether it's an audio ad on our podcast or a visual ad on our new YouTube station, or even both, we've got the space for you. Niasha Fray Consulting is reaching a growing audience of over 1,000 leaders who are passionate about health equity, social justice, and civil rights activism. These are professionals just like you, working across higher education, research, healthcare, nonprofit, government, and even public health sectors. If you're ready to get your message in front of a dedicated and engaged audience, send me an email at niashafrayconsultingllc@gmail.com. Let's talk about how we can help you connect with the people who need to hear about your services and products that advance health equity and wellness. Don't miss out. Get in the mix and let's make an impact together. Welcome back to Questions You Didn't Ask with me, Niasha Fray, and my guest, Jesse McCoy, as we continue the series, Justice or Just Us, How Law, Health, and Equity Collide in America. Let's pick up where we left off. Let's get back into some of these, disparities that we see. We often talked about, Durham is our chocolate city, one of our chocolate cities here in North Carolina. And we have been talking a lot about the rich history. I love how you say that, of racial disparities as it relates to the school to prison pipeline. Mm-hmm. But we also have some gender disparities, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about the racial and gender disparities in sentencing and how that affects community health and contributes to long-term inequities. How do these disparities manifest in your work? And what changes do you believe could address these inequities from a criminal justice standpoint?
So I don't know that I've looked at gender-based sentencing. I think one of the things, just because I'm a housing law guy, one of the things that often comes up in housing law presentations, not just here, but across the nation, is that at the time where Black men were disproportionately being imprisoned, Black women were disproportionately being evicted. Right. So, it's one of those situations where I feel like, again, the systems work the way that the engineer designs them to work, but it also comes down to kind of how do we assess what our priority is going to be it through statutes, ordinances, whatever. The focus has, up to this point, has been, in my opinion, on the destabilization of Black communities, because we don't have the ability per se to have and own our own, right? So like there are things that can be done, and again, reparations, there are things that can be done for us to be able to be in that position. But because the government, for whatever reason, seems content to not do that, everybody is trying to kind of figure it out on their own under the microscope of law enforcement, whatnot. When it comes to, I'm trying to think back, for any of the female clients that I've had, I don't know that I've had enough to really have a sample size that was established. And it's not to say that there aren't women getting arrested, but I don't know that I've had enough to have a sample size to be able to compare like what the sentencing was like for one versus the other. I will say that for the women that I've had who were arrested, largely either it dealt with substance abuse or it dealt with people making financial decisions about their body that the law says they weren't able to make as a means of putting food on the table for their kids. So it's a little bit different, but that, again, my sample size is going to be rather small. But I do think there is a lot to say about the stressors of increased living expectations, living costs, the increases that people don't seem to get in their wage, and the fact that rent can continuously go up, wage remains stagnant, and people are still somehow expected to be able to make it in a system that's not designed for them to make it. So I think that that's probably the best contribution that I can do. I wish I had a bigger sample size to be able to know otherwise.
So, just looking at the 2023 demographic differences in federal sentencing, which of course there's federal and then there's state and, other things that, we have to consider, is that, especially among Black males, that they receive sentences 13.4% longer, and Hispanic males receive sentences 11.2% longer than white males. What they found also was that Hispanic females received sentences 27.8% longer than white females, while other race females, and I'm assuming that's including Black females, receive sentences 10% shorter. So, we've been talking a little bit about similar trends. Okay, so Black males were 23.4% less likely, and Hispanic males were 26.6% less likely to receive a probationary sentence compared to white males. And similar trends were observed among females, with Black and Hispanic females less likely to receive a probation sentence than white females. 11.2% less likely for Black and 29.7% less likely for Hispanic females. So that is a huge disparity on the federal side. So that's just to touch on that. And I appreciate you sharing about, your experience, and what your small sample size communicates to you and your experience. And I think it's fair to say that there are some major inequities there that we need to address as a community and as a voting constituent, and recognizing that they say we're still a democracy. And so whether we're talking about, housing or school to prison pipeline, affirmative action, and so on, our vote matters.
Absolutely.
So along those lines, we started talking about the social determinants of health, which of course housing is one of that, healthcare is another, food security, all those have long-term effects on what we call population health. And so from a legal perspective, what are some of the most harmful policies or practices that restrict formerly incarcerated individuals from accessing these basic needs?
So again, I think my area tends to be a little more limited, so I might not know all the ways, but I was many years ago on part of the panel that expanded the expungement statutes. Because in North Carolina, we used to only have one, right? But now we have way more. So one of the things that we commonly saw was that a criminal record impacts people's ability for housing. It impacts people's ability to secure public benefits. It impacts people's ability to get employment. And those are kind of the main things that you need in order to have a life, right? So I was fortunate to work with Daryl Hunt when he was alive. For those who don't know, he's a guy who spent 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. But when he was released, he came out and he established all of these programs to help with reentry issues. And this is kind of before reentry issues were even popular. Right. And one of the things that I was able to learn in that relationship and working with him and helping to expand these expungement statutes is like a lot of people who are just looking for an opportunity to do right or struggle with the things that we would consider to be necessities. Right. So if we are in a position where we can help somebody to get a job because of an expungement, right, then maybe we need to expand the expungement statutes to include certain things, but that's a legislative process. And I think the legislative piece of it is what deters people from really seeing it through and getting the change you need. The interesting thing about when we did it was at a time where even people in quote unquote conservative counties had the same issues, right? And so when everybody has the issue, if the conservative county folks are a lot more vocal about what's happening, the policy change across the board helps everybody. But it shouldn't have to be set up so that we've got to politically lean it in to get a certain way, even though I do appreciate the benefit now of people having that option. The other thing we did, there was something called certificates of relief. People laugh at them now, but at the time, there were certain professions that you couldn't enter if you had a criminal record, like one such being a barber. Right. And so what the certificate of relief was designed to do, it was a first step in providing people, particularly folks who were in the last few months of incarceration and who were getting ready to return, the ability to be trained as a barber and to have a certificate that will vouch for them so that that issue on their record wouldn't mess it up. It was the precursor to what ultimately we wanted to be a state bonding program, which would be the state having basically an insurance policy on any person you hired who was formerly convicted. And if something went wrong, you would be able to get money. The federal government does this really well with their federal bonding process. But the state government was cool with the certificates of relief, not cool with the bonding. So they split it, and we got certificates that essentially mean nothing and have no teeth. So I think that was a place where North Carolina dropped the ball policy-wise. I also think, we've seen with housing authorities now, they're starting to reconsider kind of what constitutes a crime that disqualifies somebody for housing. But I think, the hard part for us is people try to make the challenges and changes that they want to make on the granular level that they can. But so much of this is bureaucratic and it's set up by a legislative process. So even if somebody wanted, like, let's say a housing authority, even if a housing authority wanted to say, you know what, we're not even looking at criminal records anymore as long as it's not a violent crime. Well, they would get in trouble because the federal government and the Department of Housing and Urban Development is going to say, no. We provide you with HUD regulations that dictate how this works. And if you're going to change a HUD regulation, you need to talk to Congress. And so to win over, congressional officials, it's not the simple process. Like, when I was growing up, people used to say, well, write a letter to your congressman. Like, you do that now, it's probably not getting read, right? But what it does matter is numbers, statistics, data, and an effort to show the impact that voters could have on a future election. So if you can show that you have a constituency that is actively engaged in a policy issue that wants a change, and if they don't change it, that there's going to be repercussions and ramifications at election time, then guess what? Like, people respond to you. People want to come out, at least do a photo op with you, like whatever the case may be. So I think there are things that can be done, but I wonder sometimes with so many things at the state, local, and federal level, and so many different groups of people at a time where folks aren't necessarily politically educated on who does what. I wonder if sometimes if we lose our power just because, most people I deal with, like when I go back to my community, like when I'm in the hood, people like, I just want to raise my kid and go to where I don't want to be like part of no political movement. I don't care about that. Just make sure I got money in my pocket and I can take care of my kid and that's all. Whereas on the other side, when I go to work with the people that I work with, they doing fundraisers for political candidates. Like, they know the power. So I'm just, I don't know. I hate to ask people who are already dealing with so much to tell them that they have to do more, which we seem to do every 4 years anyway.
Right.
But I do feel like there is a mechanism or lever of power that you miss out on that allows these bad policies to flourish or perpetuate just because, they beat you into submission to a certain extent. And then I think lastly, accountability is major, right? Every 4 years, people come out like, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. We vote, however we vote, people get in office, and then you don't see them again until 4 years from now, right? And not just that you don't see them because they don't come back to the community, but we don't see them because we don't go to the meetings. Like, we don't hold people accountable. We don't go. Yeah, we don't go to the meetings. We're not going to see what General Assembly is doing. We don't pop up, right? So they haven't really been forced to earn your vote yet, right? And because of that, it is an added thing. I know that I'm putting on people's plate, but it will be helpful for you to do research on people's voting records and, how do they vote? Why do they vote? Like, who are they listening to? What do they read, right? In order to see kind of who they are and why they're doing it. And for some people, maybe not everybody, but for some people, when I go to the barbershop, they have brilliant ideas about how this place could be run. Well, maybe you need to put your name on the ballot. Like, maybe you need to run for something because telling me is not helping you. Like,
no,
I'm just here to get my fade and I'm going home. I need you to go out here and present this to the people and run because, I don't believe, and maybe this is, I don't know, for better or for worse, I don't believe that a career or occupation makes you more or less of a person, right? I think that we have people who are brilliant. Like most of the law I learned was from the clients I represented who are already incarcerated and already
Look,
looked through all the cases. Be like,
and they
oh,
know
you need
what's
to check
up.
out this case. That's not gonna work. Like this is this, and I would go back and research and be like, wow, he was right, right? So that's how you learn. I don't feel like, I get this a lot at the barbershop where people are like, when you gonna run for office? When you gonna run? I know I like my family. I like my life. I'm not running for office, but I can definitely advocate for you
Right.
or, tell you the candidates that I know of based on my research who's trying to help you accomplish the things that you want. But at the same time, like, maybe some of you can run. Like, let's put you out there. Let's see. Because, people get intimidated when it comes to things like campaign finance and how
Right.
do I do this, how do I do that. It's difficult. If it was easy,
Right.
everybody would do it, right? Like, it's
Exactly.
difficult. But the folks who are in there are supposed to be representative of you. And
Right.
so even things we talked earlier about school to prison pipeline. For a while, there was a whole movement about privatization of prisons, right? You could put a private prison in a certain place that would increase access for the purpose of expanding your representatives in Congress, but yet not give those prisoners the right to vote. You would have, people getting hired who could work at the prisons, but you got a labor force of inmates who gonna do the bulk of the work. Like there's so many levels to this and so many policies that I don't present it for people to look at the breadth of the policies and say, okay, well, I got to fight everything.
Right.
I think that's where coalitions come in. So for
Right.
me, I've got people in my Rolodex who, if there's, a police killing, a wrongful police killing, I
Right.
got an attorney I can call that'll help you with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's something with housing, I can be the person to help you with that.
Right.
If
Right.
there's something dealing with, anything else, like you got people to deal with that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the coalition building you need in order to change the laws, because everybody can't be experts on everything.
No, sir.
Right?
And you
So
shouldn't.
you shouldn't. It'll drive you crazy if you try.
Right. Not recommended. If you're enjoying the show as much as we love creating it, consider showing your support by buying us a cup of coffee. Visit buymeacoffee.com/Niasha Fray O. That's buymeacoffee.com/Niasha Fray O. All one word. Each cup is just $5, and every single one helps us continue to produce, develop, and sustain the high quality content you've come to expect from Questions You Didn't Ask. Thank you for your continued support, and let's keep the conversation going. So look,
Absolutely.
let me ask you, you were touching on so many things that I want to talk about. I appreciate this so much, and I knew you would. So, we're talking a lot about policies. You talked about expungement so well, what the limitations are. You talked about bureaucracy. So one of my new, and I don't know how new it is, maybe it's just new for me in terms of, my soapbox, if you will,
Okay.
is how bureaucracy is an instrument of institutionalized racism, right?
Mm.
And everywhere that I have it, and I think the reason why that's now my new soapbox is that I've started to see it in action a
Mm-hmm.
lot more in my life recently. I've seen it affect me and other people that I care about. And so, there's levels to everything, right? And
Yep.
so like you talked about, there might be a group at a certain level that wants to do something and they're ready to move, but then there's another group at another level that have power and oversight over them that restrict that, right? And
Absolutely.
so then you try to find some sort of compromise so that you don't wind up in a bigger cluster, right? So when we think about, things like expungement, when we think about things like, these predatory housing and fact that, certain people can't get jobs because of their background, because of their criminal record, they can't get housing, they can't qualify for Medicaid, they can't qualify for food stamps, right? Who do you think benefits from maintaining these restrictions? And I think I know the answer. We probably
Mm-hmm.
said the answer. Who
Mm-hmm.
suffers? Other than the obvious, right? The direct person that is told, no, we know they're suffering because they
All
can't
right.
get the housing, they can't get. But what's the fallout? Who benefits and then what's the fallout?
So this is actually a very deep question, right? So any kind of system that's based on the white supremacist construct is going to be white heterosexual men. They benefit. Now, I'll explain why that is. Think about it like this. Some of the people in government who are the biggest opponents of things like immigration are folks who are partnered with folks who have corporations that benefit entirely on immigrant labor, right? The reason that they wanted to be illegal is because they want to have the threat of deportation if people working for them don't want to act right, right? So it's not that they're trying to stop and build a wall and all that stuff they claim they care about, right? It's the fact that we need somebody to be out here doing this work, right?
And they want to
We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. So how do we do it in a way that people have limited rights? If you deem folks to have like a faster pathway to American citizenship, then now you get access to the benefits of being an American citizen, which means you're going to have minimum wage. You're going to have certain employee-employer relations, right? It has to be set up. And you can get a complaint to the EEOC if you don't, right? They don't want that. They don't want that. They want the just like with us, they want the labor, not the issues. Right?
They don't want the accountability. Right?
They don't want the accountability, right? But it's just fascinating to see how many people will be, oh, build a wall, build a wall, build a wall. But it's like, you work for this, this Canon company, and I know that y'all have. Don't even get me started, right? Everything, even when you look at, one of my lessons that I teach my young people all the time is people are going to eat regardless, right? So what does that mean? That means that folks who are actually humble enough to come down to the county social services building to apply for food stamps or to apply for benefits, those are the people who are trying, right? But if you tell them no, they still gonna eat. It's just a matter of how's the food gonna get, right? And there are some people in our community who don't even have the patience to do the application, right? They're like, oh, I'm gonna eat regardless. I don't care what you gotta say, right? So my thing is, if there's somebody behind the screen who knows that. So they're like, okay, if you're gonna eat regardless, and we tell you no, that helps us, because if you do something criminal, feed you into our system, now we can exploit you for your labor. It's all tricks. These are traps that are set out for you, right? If you can't find housing, then you got to live with someone else. Well, if you live with someone else who's also renting, now they're in violation of their lease. So what? Either you can increase the rent or evict them too, right? So it's a system. It's a vicious system, right? I don't want to sound like Malcolm X, but it's a corrupt, vicious, hypocritical.
Please sound like Malcolm X on my show. Go right ahead.
But it's a system, too. Right? And there's always somebody with a handout who's going to benefit from you, either whether you do the system or not, right? What I always tell people is, I don't think anybody should ever feel ashamed for applying for any social benefit that we offer. Never feel ashamed. Reason why? You pay taxes, right?
Right.
You pay taxes, and this is the government's way of returning your taxes to you in some way, shape, or form that allows you to live a more full life. So you should do it, right? I also feel like there are tons of benefits that people who are getting food stamps don't even know about. Right? Let me tell you about corporate subsidies and how they work. You may be thinking, oh, I'm asking for too much if I'm trying to get $400 a month in food stamps. But they think about $400 million that they trying to get in corporate subsidies.
Wow.
So you're like, these corporations are getting over on your tax money. They take advantage of their government. And I'm not knocking the corporations. That's what it's for, right? So if we are feeling ashamed to take like what is a minuscule percentage of what we pay into the system, and we're made to feel ashamed or like welfare queens, whatever the case may be, but they out here basically financing all sorts of arms development or whatever with government money that you paid for. What's the issue? Just like at the barbershop now, a lot of people say a lot of stuff about Ukraine. Like, we send a lot of money to Ukraine. It's funny how when we ask for reparations, ain't no money, right? But when Ukraine be like, yo, can I get another?
Or universal health care, universal child care, anything like that.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. The government pays for the things that it wants to pay for, the things that it cares about, right? So it tells you, it's kind of a vicious slap in the face, particularly in the Black community, about what they think about us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you should definitely take advantage of anything that is out here and available for you to have and use to better your life through the government. I also think that's the point of government. Like the government is supposed to be for us, by us. So if the government is set up for us, it should be for our benefit, not for the benefit of a select few.
Right.
I think that the issue with just the United States of America generally, right, is our ideals are awesome, right? If we lived up to our ideals, we'd be the best place in the universe. Right?
Seriously.
But the problem is the people who came up with those ideas were white elite people who were slave owners, right? And they didn't really want everybody to have it. They wanted them to have it, right?
Right.
So we've never been able to rectify that. It's always been, well, somebody who's a white heterosexual male has to be in charge of the system. And not even just white heterosexual male, white heterosexual affluent male has to always be in charge of the system. So if you look at the presidential election, you got Kamala Harris versus what? A white affluent heterosexual.
Right.
That's the way that it always is going to work. That's the way that they always want to feed it to us. And what we are now showing is that it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like we have other people with other ideas. On top of that, I always make fun of this kind of white supremacist construct. They developed this thing called the one drop rule to keep Black people from being accepted into white society. But we're at a point in American history now where those numbers is changing, and that one drop rule means you can't create whiteness. You can only create more Blackness. So if you still following the one drop rule and you got one drop of Black, you might well come on over here with us. You with us. And the problem is that's changing up your mathematical dynamics for your elections, because they call it the browning of America. But people are like, okay, well, we've got to force feed our way into societies that we didn't have to previously deal with. And so that's why you get your Mark Robinsons, right? Somebody who's Black who wants to say, I want to own slaves, right? That's why you get that, because you need him to influence, right, a group of people to vote against their interests, right?
Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker, right? To the point that, some of them, like, especially during COVID, like Herman Cain was at a party during COVID. And I'm like, yo, and then ends up passing away. And you just act like nothing happened. Like
absolutely nothing happened.
I don't believe in COVID. There's cause of death, COVID, right? So it's one of those things where, like, I oftentimes feel bad because, I've studied, I've read all this stuff, and you probably can tell I'm an avid reader. I read newspapers every day, magazines every day, all that stuff. But it's frustrating because for me to know what I know and to work in the space that I work and be fighting for change, but then know that, like, it's like whack-a-mole. You hit one thing down, there's gonna be 10 more things that come up, and it's just no way of battling all. I can't imagine what somebody who all they're trying to do is work and raise their kid and don't read any of this stuff. I can't imagine, like, the levels of, like, psychological warfare that you see on your TV or whatever, or your kid watching on YouTube, the levels of this stuff to, like, deter you and detract you from questioning and challenging the system is astronomical. So it sometimes can feel like we're not getting anywhere. And then I always get hope when I'm at a meeting or a convention and I see other people who look like me, who understand and who are doing it in their respective fields. Right? That's inspirational. It keeps me going. I think we are all way more brilliant than anybody in this system has ever given us credit for. I think that we don't always apply the brilliance because it's just a lot to deal with. But at the same time, I feel like it don't take much, right? It doesn't take much if we can encourage each other to, build our own coalitions or whatever. And then to hark back to kind of this immigration piece, right? So the immigration piece is a calculated risk. And what I mean by that is there are images of kind of what Black people are that are projected to folks who come here from other places.
Child, now you about to talk about something. Go ahead. I'm gonna give you some room.
So the whole point is to perpetuate, like, archaic stereotypes about who we are, how violent we are, how dangerous we are, so that there will be acceptance.
How lazy we are.
how lazy we are after building the country. Imagine that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they put this out there so that they can win acceptance and establish kind of this white supremacist mantle that people can somehow immigrate and bleed into regardless of how they look, with the full understanding that they're never going to, like on the other side, that they're never going to integrate fully into that society, right? Like it's not like
not the rich white elite. They
Right.
you can strive for it.
Right. But it's the otherism. It's, well, at least you'll be better than
Oh,
Jaquan,
please.
right?
Yes.
Be better than Jaquan. And the problem is that people don't understand that Jaquan been getting money. Like Jaquan do what he's supposed to do, right? He got his degrees, he do whatever it is. Like you see that with sisters all the time. Like the fact that all of these obstacles were made to keep Black women from doing things, but yet who's the most educated group of people in America? Like the thing about Black people that they haven't figured out yet, we gonna figure it out. Like we gonna find a way. You can't tell me I can't do something. I just gotta be creative about it. I'll figure it out. So it's this. It's like, how do you create a party that's based on a mantle of a white supremacist construct when you don't have the numbers to sustain the white supremacy exclusively, right?
When you created the race label in the first place. Thank you for joining us on Questions You Didn't Ask with me, Niasha Fray, and my guest, Jesse McCoy. Tune in next week as we continue our series, Justice or Just Us: How Law, Health, and Equity Collide in America.